Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Effing the Ineffable. I'm Lani Milbus. Today's episode is called Black Magic and Light. And I hope to cover the subject of black magic in one aspect. It There are many definitions, obviously, some less nefarious than the one that I'm going to be treating today. Some are just, works of low magic, of doing maybe what amounts to practice, to invoking spirits or evoking spirits of uh, a lower quality to achieve material ends for selfish means. This isn't what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm talking more about the Black Lodge stuff. The the darkness that exists in the world at this time, and how sometimes magicians or people who start out on a spiritual path can take what they know and turn it into a system with which they can thwart the will of others and control things that they probably shouldn't be controlling. So, kind of the Black Lodge stuff, as I said. Yeah, and black magic also does not refer to a particular race or creed of people. I'm not treating voodoo or anything else here as I'm sure there are practitioners of both in every sect and whatever. And all people are equally divine and beautiful as the next. This is not about a type of people. This is about a type of art, or lack of, if we can look at it that way. Which we can, because first of all, black, as defined, is not a color. Most everybody who took any art in school knows this. Black is not on the light spectrum. Black is the absence of light. So that is the definition I'm going to be using. Whereas white is the purest vibration of light that our eyes can perceive. And I'm kind of going to be, as I said in the title, treating this as black versus light, and as opposed to white. So, in magical terms, light is not the same as physical light, of course, though there's relationship. It's called light because it acts the same upon ignorance and spiritual darkness as physical light does upon the material plane. It dispels it, illuminates it, and makes it not its opposite. So I refer to light as spiritual discernment, understanding, and realized knowledge. This is the real stuff, not the book stuff. Realized knowledge and theoretical knowledge are differentiated. Theoretical knowledge is, say, what you get from the external world, from books, from study, from teachers, things that you're told, and then you therefore internalize and try to see in the world. But all theoretical knowledge ultimately is useless unless it's backed up by an experience. So when we learn something from a book, then we try it and we say, hey, this works like this, or ideally study it for a longer period of time, practice with it for a longer period of time, get results, and are able to form more informed experiential opinions. And then realized knowledge can come from that method, from getting the theoretical knowledge first, and sometimes realized knowledge just comes from that source. It comes out from within and it strikes as a truth or a revelation. And I mean, while it's important to remain skeptical of anything that we believe, because beliefs are subject to change, this realized knowledge from within typically, it just kind of blows everything else away, for lack of a better way to put it. It's you just know it's truth. there's no doubt, it's in the fiber of one's being. You know it in your bones. And realized knowledge, again, is different than the theoretical knowledge. So they're both knowledge. Some black magicians, in particular, I'll be talking about, are born from a deficiency in understanding of this. From ignorance, all of the evils of the world arise. If someone knows how badly they're hurting someone or all of the consequences of their actions, I'm not saying every person, but most people would not do those things. They're able to blind themselves to the consequences and shut off their empathy or whatnot, and that allows them to do evil to others. So they're not putting the pieces together, getting the whole picture. They're zeroed in on their own focus, their own intent, and kind of blocking the rest out. So there's a tunnel vision that kind of lends to the ignorance. Now, magically speaking, the word black refers to ignorance, to what you have made, say, invisible, or what you're not looking at. Ignorance. So it can be said that this is ignorance of the true will, or of the true selfhood in the individuals who choose the more harmful or oppressive path. So I think it's safe to say that they are unaware of true will as we have defined it previously. That core, that center, which is the truth of everyone, essentially, maybe in different colors and different varieties of form, but the same true will, same true self at the very most fundamental level. So in a Black Lodge for Black Brothers to emerge from the work, let's examine a line from Crowley's Book of the Law to first demonstrate this point about how fine the line between ignorance and the realized knowledge or the discernment is, in short, black or white. So chapter 2 of the Book of the Law is written with Hadit as the speaker. Hadit is hidden by the god of the first chapter, his bride, Nuit. I mention this because it creates a revelatory paradox in line 23 that we'll be discussing here. Also note the allusion to knowledge aright, to know me aright, with a capital K for knowledge. Now for our purpose, examine line 23. It says, I am alone, there is no God where I am. In chapter 1, Nuit declares herself and Hadit as gods. So how do we reconcile this? So Hadit has recognized Nuit has recognized Hadit as herself, both of them as gods, and here we have a line that claims, I am alone, there is no God where I am. Well, we're going to have to step back. Swami Mukundananda reveals a similar paradox when he defines Maya and God as the energy and the energetic. Maya is the material energy of God, mind and matter. Our minds and our bodies are God's material energy, or Maya. He goes on to relate Maya and material, to relate mind and material, the energy to the light and heat of a fire, with fire being the source of the light and heat. Light and heat are aspects of the fire, distinguishable from one another, but they exist only as manifestations of the fire. Hadit represents our true self within. He is the eye of our consciousness. Not the outward manifestations, but that internal I. And we find a similar idea in Christianity. Christ said, "He that seeth me, seeth him that sent me." He's alluding to his sense of self versus the perception of him. When he also says, "I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. And I in the midst of me," as he talks about as being God. The revelation of Moses is the same, "I am that I am." So, along with "the place whereon thou stand is holy ground." So in these three different ideologies, three different religions, we have a very similar idea about the nature of self. How it's self, but not self. In other words, it is the deepest, most, not even deepest, because it's closer to the individual being, as Joel Goldsmith defines it, as consciousness itself. So it's right there, right at the forefront, but it's also it doesn't have the personal identity. It doesn't have all of the ego stuff. So at the center of me and every one of you is the supreme divine selfhood. Krishna, Christ, Hadith, and so on. And not as a separate entity, but as the true nature and consciousness of the self. There is no power on earth or in heaven that is greater than that I am, which we find in all of these religions again. In fact, at that center, there is nothing else. This pure consciousness is it. All that exists is this God or consciousness. Therefore, Hadith, the secret and holy center, which is kind of identifying with this idea, does not perceive any God or anything that is not self, that is not that I. This truth is the light of spiritual discernment. Not only to realize this truth about our own individual identity, but about everyone and everything, every being and non-being, placing ourselves in equanimity. This is confirmed by the term namaste, of the yogi, which I'm sure everyone has heard and knows how to translate. The aforementioned words of Christ in Crowley as confirmation at his communion within the Gnostic Mass is, "There is no part of me that is not of the gods." Everyone recognizes the truth of this selfhood within themselves. It's the reason we have inflated egos and self-importance and ridiculous expectations that we build around ourselves. Because everyone has a sense of this and craves for recognition of their divine nature. And our world isn't very conducive to that. But not everyone recognizes the universality of it. And this is the important part. This is the important distinction between the black and the light. This small error is the source of all black magic or evil in the world. That one that would recognize my own inner self, my truest self, my very consciousness as being divine, as being God, as being the all that I am. But then looking out into the world and making the assumption that that is not true of what I see. That it's only me, it's mine. That is that source of evil. So you might ask, how can evil exist if everyone and everything is God? Is God a sadist? God is omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent. Why doesn't God stop the evils of the world and shine this light, Well, evil only exists in the material world or Maya. It doesn't exist at the level of pure consciousness. It doesn't exist at the level of pure God, of Hadith. There is no evil there, because there is nothing else. Maya literally means, in translation, that which is not. It's illusion. It's the energy of God. Our bodies and our minds are made of Maya. Therefore, our bodies and our minds can do and be subject to this good and evil. It can interplay with this illusion. But our soul, the God within us, cannot recognize what does not exist. Good and evil are symptoms of mind and body being attached to and absorbed in the illusions that they themselves create. This is not, I don't want this to be mistaken. There are many ways I'm trying to think of the thoughts, but this isn't victim blaming. Someone who's been hurt by someone else, this is not saying they created the evil that was brought upon them. We have a problem in the world right now. So, as in Liber Samek, I am he who hate that evil should be wrought in the world. By using our minds and our bodies to increase our realization of the universality of God as the nature of every individual self, we are responsible ourselves for eradicating this evil. Essentially, we've created this illusion, and it's our job to put the big bright light upon it so it disappears, so that the blackness is chased back from the shadows. The true task of the adept and the master, I assume, is to facilitate the breaking through of the light of this truth in others, is to lift the veil of ignorance and chase darkness from the earth. But the bulk of this work has to be done within ourselves. We can't work on someone else's consciousness. What we should have as our goal to consistently be conscious of this divinity within ourselves, called Karma Yoga, or Karma Yoga in American, within the yogi system, is always focusing your mind on the source of your devotion, the object of your devotion, I should say. To constantly be conscious of this divinity within ourselves and others with equanimity, else we cannot help others to do what we know nothing of. We bring forth this light from within, that it may touch and beckon the light in others. One doesn't need to look to see great evils committed, doesn't need to look too far, is what I'm saying, to see great evils committed by men and women all over. I don't even have to say, anybody that's on social media, or people are treating each other really, really poorly. I don't know that it's been this way always, but you don't have, for me, I don't have to sit here and explain that evil exists and people can be really shitty. So our so-called black brothers, who may be of any gender, race, or creed, is kind of that. It's our society. It's the ignorant in our society that are running rampant and doing harm and just in every possible way trying to smash each other down and be king of the mountain. It's like the crabs in a bucket. But yeah, the black brothers, they can be of any gender, race, or creed. I believe we're approaching a point of crisis in which all of humanity will have to evolve into a greater understanding of each individual nature being divine, and recognizing the nature of conscious life, of sentient life, that very sentience being this ultimate power, or perish. I really believe we're reaching a crisis point, and that's the next step in evolution. It's being put before us. We do this or we die. And the material energy, or Maya, cannot be overcome by man. So the realization of this nature of consciousness is what overcomes the Maya, or the illusion. You're not going to beat the illusion. You're not going to own the mind, or own matter, or own... they're creating AI now that they think could take over consciousness, assuming that consciousness is a brain. There is far too much evidence to the contrary, the least of which is not motor neurons, which never hit the brain. Motor neurons circle around the spine and send straight back out into the muscle. Consciousness is not a brain, but this is where science is now, in terms of biological science, and they're going to try, but you can't overcome consciousness or the mind or the body or matter by using the mind or the body or matter. As Maya is that material energy of God or of consciousness or whatever word you want to use, but it's of a greater, it's an extension of a greater power. And to try to overcome that greater power by using the lesser extension, it's not going to work. It cannot be overcome by might or cunning. It has to be seen for what it is. The only way to shine light upon the ignorance and to have the revelations and to become realized in realized knowledge is to see it for what it is. And then everything else tends to fall into place and perspective. To do that, we have to increase our conscious awareness of the presence of what I call God as individual consciousness. Call it what you will, we have to realize that this is the essence of all life. Then the illusion falls away. This is called spiritual healing in an infinite way tradition, where you don't actually do anything upon anyone else. All you do is you realize the truth of the nature of the situation, and it takes care of itself. We'll consider the oath of the abyss in this regard. I will, the oath of the abyss, Crowley's oath of the abyss was, I will interpret every phenomenon whatsoever as a particular dealing of God with my soul. When we become aware of evil, we must seize that as an opportunity to realize the true divine nature of the evildoer, and this is the healing. Look at them and you'll see them. If you abide in the realization of their consciousness as divine, as their main structure as God, as divine, you'll see, it will be apparent as day that they're ignorant and that they're running from something. And you meditate upon their actions as they're performing them, and you see them as deluded, and you'll see them as fearful, but it breaks them down and honestly does some healing, even if they're not aware that you're doing it. They're often just scared, confused, and hurt. These are some of the main reasons people turn into that. Personally, I allow myself to indulge in hate. It's not healthy for everyone, but I don't hate the person. I hate the pride they have in their false sense of self. I hate their ignorance of their true nature, of our true nature. I hate their actions, but I don't dwell on it. And it doesn't affect me in a stressful way. That's why I can indulge in it. I just, it's like a despising, but not emotionally attached to the despising or the hatred. It's just, But when we focus on the I at the center of their being as they're doing these nasty things, that is always knocking on the door of their consciousness, and see their actions as attempts to escape or usurp it, you have no doubt as the presence of arises from within us, it also breaks forth in them. As we're seeing this, our perspective is adjusting within ourselves, but it's also turning a mirror on them without us doing anything, because the consciousness at the center of us is the same. It's the same field. It's the same web that we're acting upon. So when we realize it and we see them for who they are and what they're actually doing, something breaks forth in them. Sometimes it appears in their lives as destruction. If they see that and that revelation sparks within them and they continue to fight it, you can see them go through a whole lot of crap. And if you're like I am and you don't mind hating their bullshit, then at that point to watch them continue to trip over trying to get away from it and trying to hurt people, and then see them get smacked down by their own higher self because of the way that there is, can be kind of satisfying, but that's my dark side. But eventually the light breaks forth and their tower is destroyed. They can't win. You cannot overcome Maya with Maya. You can only overcome Maya with God. And that's a Vedic principle that I can't deny. It's in every religion, it's in magic. But in this way, we can help that along. Our primary goal must be toward increasing the awareness of God as the I within us. In other words, whichever way we see it. I know some people don't like these words that I use as God or whatnot, but there is a source of magic, and no school of magic talks about there not being a source. So whatever word you use, the awareness of that is what's important. So the way that line in the Book of the Law comes into this is, if you ask someone who appears to be black intent or kind of blinded to the divinity in everyone else, or just what I'm calling a black magician, ask for their interpretation of chapter 2, line 23 of the Book of the Law, and they'll likely have one of self-aggrandized atheism or great pride. And it's a tempting error. There is no God where I am. Essentially, I am the king of this mountain. It's me and me alone. The Bhagavad Gita calls that the pride of doership. These people think of themselves, and I've been there. It's not these people as in they're bad people. It's just it's a process, and they think of themselves as the source of all their actions, good and bad. And this is where we go back to that Christian line: I can of mine own self do nothing. We are not the doer. It's because they think of themselves as the mind and the body that they don't see the mind and the body of the tools of the soul as God in individual consciousness. This is why they think, oh man, I'm so smart, look at what I thought up, or look at this great thing I did, when it's more satisfying to be grateful that your dedication to the great work allowed the God within to use you as a tool to create this thing, so that you're beholding what came through you objectively as it just, whoa, that is what manifests when I get out of the way. So it's a very fine line between these things. A little satisfaction in making strides is human. I'm not saying, just don't ever pat yourself on the back. I mean, in proportion to the extent of the attachment of the individual to the illusion, the breaking up of that false sense of self and light breaking through is painful in proportion to that, to however hard you're holding on. It's like when you're holding on to a rope in a tug of war, and you're squeezing and you're going to lose, but you continue squeezing, you're getting the rope burn. If you let go, you can avoid that. But it's only human to feel satisfaction when you've done that, when you've held on to that, and you beat it, and you let go, and you survived, and you got through the ordeal, and you've become initiated, or you've reached the grade, or whatever it is. It's okay to feel some satisfaction and some, oh man, ooh, I'm really glad, even though it's not you that has made that possible. And you have to recognize that it's not you. You're a witness. You're a chela. It's not. We are not the doers of our actions. Because we are not our bodies and our minds. Our bodies are just a bunch of cells. Our minds are supposedly things that just come out of those cells. But this false I of the body, of the ego, is a mischievous distraction that made it so long and so painful to evolve in the first place. So while it's okay to feel a little bit of, yeah, I did it, it should be quick and just like, well, yeah, but I also caused it. So constantly abide in the spiritual discernment of the truth of the nature of the God who am alone within us, within me, within you, and everyone who ever has or does or will exist, and bring forth that light into the world in every moment. It starts not at every moment, but you build it. You always remember when you remember, and strive to build that so that it becomes constant. Strive never to forget that the place whereon thou stand is holy ground. There's not a heaven in the mountains we're looking for. We're looking to make it right here, because it is. And at all times, that is the light that keeps one from being a member of the Black Lodge, the Black Brotherhood, the Black Magicians, is the one that realizes that I, at the center of me, closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet, as I think Jesus said, right here, my very consciousness is God, and so is yours, and so is the animal, and so is everything else. Because that breeds in us a perspective of God is here presenting this situation. What am I to learn from this? How do I unfold from this situation? As opposed to the person that thinks they are the doer of all of their actions, and usually ends up in some kind of perspective of trying to defeat all the others who are trying to do their things, because it's naturally a competition, because there are many things fighting for the same thing. So, it's as Lon Milo Duquette says, it's all in your head. You just have no idea how big your head is, and that all that you can possibly encounter is also a part of that. And once you have to separate that from the ego, the thing that says it's mine alone. So that is the nature of black magic, of the Black Lodge, of the ignorance. And I think if you'll meditate on some of these things, if you've gotten anything from this to carry with you, all of the sources I've named talk about this endlessly. But if you carry it with you and you can remain conscious of it, I think you'll start to see the nature of the things in this world that are not so good right now. I'm not speaking of any particular sect or politic or anything like that. People are just being nasty to each other. But this helps to see the nature of it. And honestly, as they say, it does tend to make that energy stay away from you if you realize these things. I don't want to claim, I can cure all the evils with love, or, that's what they say. I'm a little more of a grump. But, I think about it in these terms, that if there was one person that was ignorant of this truth on earth, and that's it, just the one person, and they were shouting and screaming and doing all they did, and everyone else was just standing around lovingly smiling while they did this, they couldn't carry on for very long. Eventually they catch on, because nothing that they're doing to get the attention or to be violent against the brothers or anything else would work. It would just be everybody sitting there watching the truth of them and patiently waiting for them to get it. And that energy alone would drive them into an enlightenment. Right now, I think it's just that there are so many people at that point that we need everyone that we can come into contact with to start getting this perspective, this light perspective of knowing the truth of themselves and the truth of everyone. And I believe that is the way to the next step of evolution, and to perhaps ending a dark period in our history. So that's all I have for today. I I hope some of it is useful. I look forward to, if you want to go to the Path of Return Facebook group and comment, join, or whatnot. You're welcome there. I'd be happy to discuss any of this and any of the specific sources I've used as well. I hope you accomplish your true will and are able to manifest your own divine nature and help others to do the same. Until next time, I wish you well. Goodbye.